this, I need to go live. Okay. All right, hello everyone. Thanks for showing up today to the to this YouTube special edition of our OSCA Meetup. I really appreciate it. I am clicking between different things, so I'm so sorry. I'm a little discombobulated right now. Oh no, okay. So I wanted to welcome everyone right now. We have, here we go. I'm going to stop sharing. There we go. That's what I was looking for. So I wanted to introduce everyone. I'm Sarah Hoffman. I'm the Ohio School Counseling Association president. There's been so much stuff going on this year. Thanks everyone for being so patient with us. And we are trying to get information out, and we're trying to be accurate and respectful of everyone. And so I appreciate everyone showing up today. And then we have, of course, Willa Marie Jackson, who is president-elect of the Ohio School Counseling Association. We have Michelle Grimm, who is watching on YouTube. So she is watching on YouTube. Hi, Michelle. And Graham Wood, once again, from Ohio Department of Education, Graduation Requirements Program Administrator, is here with us again today. Whoop, whoop. Please access the agenda document in the chat. It should be pinned at the top. We are going to work through the questions on that document. So please do use that document. It is a Google shared document. After the meeting, I will shut down the sharing settings, but it is something that you can take with you. Now, because it is shared with all of us watching, anyone can type into that answer column. So this by no means is an official ODE document. It is not. So that is one thing with sharing, is you have, anyone can go in there and type anything. So we are being very careful with that, and I'm trying to keep on top of it and delete things. But so just know that. There's also the grad requirements at education.ohio.gov that is also in the link. So if you have a super duper real specific question, that's where that question needs to go. Today we're going to be big view. What do most of us as high school, junior high, high school counselors, what do we need to know to get through the next couple months? And it is spring break. If you are on spring break, good for you. We start spring break on Friday, so yay. I am going to turn this over to Graham, and we're going to kind of bounce back and forth, and we'll go through the questions on that shared document. But I'm going to turn it over to Graham right now.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. And I appreciate you having me. And I appreciate everybody joining today to hopefully get some information. I want to let you all know, first, we are still working on our information coming from the department in relation to House Bill 67. We have 2 documents that we're in the process of developing, and we hope to have out very soon, hopefully by the end of this week. They're still in the review process at the department. So hoping to have those out as quickly as possible. But those two documents are in relation to the two main provisions of House Bill 67. And I wanted to take some time and just use this slide as a helpful tool for folks to understand, what the different parts and pieces of House Bill 67 are and how they might play into your students' pathways to graduation this year and next year potentially for some of our seniors. So the two documents that we have developed are, one, dealing with the course grade substitution for juniors and seniors, and that also touches on American history, which was also included as a piece of House Bill 67. And the second document outlines the two new pathways to graduation that are afforded as a part of House Bill 67. I say two new graduation pathways. One of them you are likely very familiar with from last year's graduation flexibility. So just touching on this, the course grade substitution is super similar to last year's course grade substitution. It is essentially allows students that are eligible to substitute their grade in an end of course tested course for that end of course test score. So any of those courses that are associated with that end of course test, so an Algebra 1 course with that Algebra 1 assessment, that course grade a student could use to substitute for their end of course test. Now, this is this year only available to juniors and seniors. So that's students in the 11th or 12th grade. The law was very specific about only those two classes having access this year to that course grade substitution. And it is reserved for students that either take the test. So a student that took the, if they're a junior, potentially the American government test, they took that course this year, they took that test this year, they can use either their end of course test score or they can substitute it with their end of course grade. Last year's course grade substitution, we didn't have anybody that tested, so it was just for students that hadn't taken the test. This year, it is also available to students who did take the test. The other group of students that can access it are students who are unable to test for whatever reason. So either a student that took the test, they can use that course grade in lieu of that score that they got, or a student who is unable to test can use that course grade, as their test score if they are unable to test. So that is the course grade substitution this year. Is the same grading scale that we saw last year, applying from grades to and of course test points, and from grades to competency and seals. So we are working on that information document that'll outline that. And we also touched there on the citizenship seal and American history. Another thing that was a part of House Bill 67 was it removed the requirement for schools and districts to offer the American history end of course test. It did not prohibit schools and districts from offering that test. So we had some questions right when this was passed. Is this test canceled for this year? Is it not going to be offered at all? And that answer is no. It is still going to be offered. It is going to be available. And I will refer to some information that was, I believe on Monday, put out from our Office of Assessment. And I can include that link in the document here in a couple minutes. Once we move on to some questions, I'll be able to stop sharing my screen and jump over there. But I can include that link in the document because that'll also touch on that. The department is encouraging schools and districts to still offer American history as an option, especially if the majority of students that take American history are not in this group of students that would be offered the course grade substitution, because there was no change to the citizenship seal in House Bill 67. Students who are hoping to earn the citizenship seal as a part of their pathway to graduation still need to meet the requirements of both American history and American government. Now, they do not have to use that end of course test to meet those requirements. There are other ways that they can do that through AP, IB, or College Credit Plus, but many, many, many students will use those end of course tests to meet that seal requirement. So, to ensure that those students still have access to that seal if they would like to earn it, it may behoove the school or district to still maintain that American history assessment as an option and to still offer it to those students. So a little bit more information about that is available in that assessment document, because that's really more of an assessment choice that is being made. but it does impact a student's pathway to graduation, especially as we talk about that citizenship seal for those long-term graduation requirements. So that's the course grade substitution portion. We will have a document that outlines all of that and outlines, that process. It'll be very similar to the document that was released last year. The second document that we're working on developing is a document that outlines 2 new pathways to graduation that were offered as a part of House Bill 67. The first pathway to graduation that's outlined in that document and in the bill, I believe it is in section 4, is very, very, very similar to the curriculum only pathway that was offered last year during the ordered school building closure. So what that pathway does is it requires the student's principal in consultation with the teachers and counselors to determine whether or not the student has met the curriculum requirements. And assuming that student is either in 12th grade this year or is considered on track to graduate this year, which are kind of the eligibility umbrella for that. Based on meeting those curriculum requirements, it allows the school or district to award a diploma to that student. So that's kind of our curriculum only pathway that we're working with. The additional graduation pathway involves a student meeting the curriculum requirements and then also earning the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal. So a couple things there. First, both of these are only available this year. They do not specify any specific cohort that a student needs to be in to use these graduation requirements. Similarly to, last year's, graduation requirements. It wasn't specific to one cohort or another, but it is only specifically available this year. So our current juniors, assuming that no further flexibility is passed next year, will not be able to access these to graduate in the 2021-2022 school year. We will revert back to the original 3 pathways to graduation, 18 end of course points, industry credentials and work keys, and the remediation free ACT or SAT or the long-term requirements for next year. But this year, these 2 pathways are available. The second piece that I wanted to touch on is evading me. And I'm sure it'll come up in question and I will be able to touch on that when we get there. But those are the second piece. We've gotten some questions about the duplicate nature of these pathways. We have our curriculum requirements only pathway that involves that principal in consultation with teachers and counselors, determining whether the student has met the curriculum requirements and then awarding a diploma then. We also have the other pathway that involves curriculum requirements and the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal on top of that. We've had some folks ask, does the student have to earn the readiness seal? Can they just do the curriculum only pathway? These are 2 separate pathways and they are not specific about the eligibility requirements being different for either of them, as far as I understand right now. We're still getting some further clarification within the department, but that is my current understanding. If you're wondering about that and are still unsure, feel free to wait for our guidance. That'll definitely, the information documents that we can put out will definitely clarify that. But as far as we understand right now, those groups of students that are eligible for those are the same. The Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal would be, a great resource for any student. So I highly encourage folks, if you have the ability to have students earn the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal, we have a lot of employers here in Ohio who stand behind that readiness seal as a great additive resource for students. So I highly recommend, looking into that, and if students are able to earn that, that would be awesome. But as far as we understand, that curriculum only pathway will be available as well to students that meet those eligibility requirements. So that hopefully should cover everything. And that is the main pieces that we have in the information documents that we are putting out. Once again, there are 2 of them, one around course grade substitution, one around graduation pathways. And that is all I have prepared to say. And I know there are quite a bit of questions and I am more than happy to talk through those now. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen so that folks don't have to see that. And then I can also put that assessment document in the Google document. So Sarah, are there any questions that you want to jump into?
There are. There are some questions.
Oh,
all right, so I'm trying to go through. So everyone has the agenda document and they're putting things in. And I'm going to try to go through and just kind of highlight the questions. And know that the answers that are in there are not like, that's from people sharing their own opinion. So we need to wait for the ODE actual official documents. Okay.
Yeah. And the reason for that is just because anybody could, edit that. I just want to make sure that, if you're getting something and you're relying on it being from the department and official, we can't be sure that something in there hasn't been edited. So I want to make sure that if you're relying on something, it could potentially come, through email or be in our official information document. So that's the clarification there. And
Okay.
I'm putting this extra document in the resources portion here.
Great, thank you. And there are, at the very bottom of the document, the agenda document, there are resources that we shared. And I also put in a little resource about Canva. I had people ask about, how we make our like our promotional information for OSCA, and we use Canva for that. So you can get a free subscription to that. So anyway, so Willa Marie, I see you asking a question. I'm going to run through these questions real quick. So if a 12th grader, so they're looking at a senior who needs the OST points, do they have to go back and replace, do they have to do anything like in Power School or Dazzle or anything to show with the Ohio State test points? This is what this person's asked. Do they have to go back and do any paperwork for their seniors?
So that's a great question. A couple pieces there. One, in the information document that we have around their pathway to graduation, there will be, some more info in there that'll speak to, what kind of documentation is needed. I don't believe there will be any specific documentation required by the department if you're using one of those new pathways, other than reporting mechanisms. So that's the second piece that I was going to bring up. It really does depend on what pathway to graduation a student is meeting, what needs to be reported in EMIS, and how that needs to play out. I would keep an eye out for, official information coming from our EMIS office as to exactly what reporting needs to happen and how that will work. My understanding is that if you're using that course grade substitution, you would use the score not reported W code. That would be the specific code that would be used for EMIS reporting. But this is all dependent on which pathway to graduation a student's using. So if they're using that 18 end of course point pathway, then yes, you would need to ensure that in EMIS they have met all of their points for end of course tests. Other reporting mechanisms, I would say, would be dependent on that pathway, and I would wait for information from our EMIS staff on that.
Okay, but if it's a senior using the curriculum requirements.
Right, and that's where I would say, I think that depends on what our EMIS staff is going to require in terms of reporting, because, aside from graduation, there can be report card implications with what's reported as well. So that's a helpful piece there, just to make sure that they are saying the same thing.
Okay. And the out-of-state students, that's a big question. I'm at Whitmer High School, which we are a chip shot away from Michigan. So we are constantly having kids come in from Michigan, and we love all of our Michigan kids. But how are out-of-state students able to meet the graduation requirements? So I'm thinking if you have an out-of-state senior, they fall under that curriculum requirement, correct?
Well, yeah, I mean, it depends on what they've met. So you'd need to review their transcript and, you look at their credits as they compare, coming from Michigan to Ohio, and ensure that, as you transfer those credits in, they have met the curriculum requirements. But as long as they've met one of those pathways to graduation, yeah, I mean, that just like in a normal year, you'd want to ensure that they're meeting a pathway to graduation once they've transferred in. Once they transferred in, they're an Ohio student, and they're, able to use any of the pathways that are available here in Ohio, including those two new pathways from House Bill 67.
Okay, so if it's a junior coming from Michigan, can they use the course substitution instead of taking all of the tests?
So yeah, I mean, that would depend on when they get here. If they get here next year, then no, because they wouldn't have been in this test window.
Let's say they
But
move this year.
if they move this year, you know, we're still encouraging that students, you know, take those tests. You know, the course grade substitution, you know, my understanding is that the students, you know, would still need to take those tests, you know, and then use the course grade substitution.
Okay.
If they're unable to take the test for some reason or another, they would also have access to that course grade substitution, you know, for any number of reasons. There are, you know, reasons that a student would be unable to take an end of course test, but we're encouraging folks to have students take those tests, and then they have access to that course grade substitution, you know, as well.
So that's the big thing, is if they can test, they need to test. And then the course grade substitution comes in.
Yeah, and that's, you know, in that assessment document, I would lean into what our assessment office is saying in terms of, you know, choices about testing students. They're the experts, you know, in regards to that testing policy. So I would lead on that document. And if you have questions about that, feel free to reach out to our Office of Assessment. They're really responsive and great about those kind of things, and about, you know, who should be testing.
Okay, I'm going to ask one more question. I'm going to throw it over to Willa Marie because she's chomping at the bit. Okay, so this is an interesting question, and some of these we're not going to be able to answer today. Just know that. But if a parent decides to opt their child out of testing who's a sophomore, there's no grade conversion, right?
So no, I mean, this kind of lines up with that, the situation with American history. You know, the course grade substitution does not extend to sophomores at this point. So that student would not be eligible for that course grade substitution. That's as we understand the law right now, it specifically does apply to 11th and 12th graders.
Okay. All right. Willa Marie, jump in. What's going on in the chat? I can't keep track of both things. So you're doing the YouTube chat. I'm doing this document.
Yes, so we're having tons of fun in this chat. There was a general question that was asked. No matter what, each student must earn 20 credits to graduate, correct? So yeah, I mean, they would need to meet the curriculum requirements. Another piece that was included, apologies, I should have brought this up. The bill also gave the ability, just like it did last year, for you know, a district to revert back to the statewide minimum of 20 credits. If a district chooses to do that, then yes, Willa Marie, the answer would be the student needs to meet that curriculum requirement. I would say that the student needs to meet the curriculum requirement of your school or district. You know, it can be determined by the principal for that one pathway that the student has met the curriculum requirement. And you know, that's the case there, is that it's just, I'd say it's specific to your school or district. That may be more than 20 credits if you don't choose to. The minimum for state requirements is 20.
Is 20, correct.
Correct. Okay. The next question that was kind of general was, we keep saying that ODE, the timeline, like this is not official. We got some requests to print off the agenda, and can we use that as reference with other colleagues? Just to be clear, I shared, hey, you guys, these are not official responses, so just be careful with sharing that. Do we have an approximate timeline as to when some official literature or documentation should be shared from ODE?
I don't know that I can give an official timeline. I can tell you that my time limit is to get this out as soon as possible, because I completely understand. You know, our graduation inbox, as many of you have probably sent emails to it, is you know, got a lot of questions about House Bill 67 right now. I am eager to get official answers out to folks. There's just, you know, some folks that do need to review these that haven't, you know, gotten a chance to do that yet. So we're trying to get them out as soon as possible. I would really hope that we're able to get them out by the end of this week, but you know, it really is dependent on you know, some things that just need to be done. And I can't commit to, you know, exactly when they'll be available, but I hear you, Willa Marie, and I hear all the people speaking.
Voice of the people.
We need these, and I completely understand, and we are working to get that as soon as possible. So understand, I understand your frustration. I understand your wish to get these documents. We're working as quickly as we can.
Perfection. I'm going to ask one last general question and then I'll throw it back to Sarah. I'm sure she's looking through those questions. So Sarah, just give me cue. There was a question brought up, and I can't remember the name, as far as they had the understanding that if a student took an ACT test, then that was a graduation pathway. To which the response is, yeah, they can take ACT, but they still have to meet those college readiness benchmarks to cover that graduation pathway. Is that still the case as it was?
Yeah, so nothing changed with that remediation-free ACT or SAT pathway. If a student is choosing to use that pathway to graduation, they would need to meet the remediation-free scores as established by the Ohio University College's presidents. So those remediation-free scores, I believe, are available on our website. I'd have to grab the link for those. But they would need to meet those remediation-free scores if they were choosing to use that pathway. That pathway does assume that a student has met their curriculum requirements as well. You know, any of the pathways to graduation that we have are curriculum and insert pathway. So curriculum and 18 points, curriculum and remediation-free ACT, SAT.
Perfect. I'm going to throw it back to Sarah and I'll give y'all cue when I'm chomping again. Thank you.
All right. This is like a, like a news broadcast, just in from ODE. Okay. So this is an interesting question, and I feel like I should know the answer to it. But we had a bunch of our current sophomores couldn't test as freshmen because of the pandemic. How are these 10th graders supposed to catch up with their points since they missed the testing in the spring? Wasn't there a course substitution for the sophomores, like when they were freshmen?
Yeah. So their course grade substitution last spring and summer was available to every student. It was not specifically for just juniors and seniors. So if those students missed end of course tests last year, there's a document that's still available on our website. It's actually what we're modeling this year's document off of. And I'm more than happy to share that as well. I think it might already be in that meetup. And if it's in that, no, it's not. Okay. I will definitely grab that and put that in there as well to make sure that folks have that. But that is applicable to last year for any student that missed a test in the 2019-2020 school year during those spring and summer windows when tests were canceled. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Those students have access to course grade substitution as long as they were in Ohio and scheduled to take a test or to retake a test. So those students, they can use a course grade for the corresponding course. So likely for those students that you're talking about, Sarah, those freshmen would have a course grade from last year when they took that test.
Right. So they can use that. Okay. Because I can't imagine we'd just leave them out in the lurch. Same, and that would go for any like 8th grade student last year that took that was in Algebra 1.
Yep.
That is an 8th grade course substitution that you just go into your FA screen of Power School and you just swap that out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get into, I don't know the specifics of how it works within Power School. The thing that I've been told by our EMIS staff to say is the score not reported W code. So that is
really?
how it's being reported.
Because I thought there was if you got an A, it was a 5. If you got a B, it was a 4.
And exactly how that ends up being reported is where I get ignorant and don't want to speak to that. So I parrot the same line that I know is correct. So that may be the case.
That's true because now we have that competency score. Say it again. What is it?
684.
684. It couldn't have just. Come on, just give us 400. Just give us a straight. It's a hard number to remember. So it's funny because OGTs used to be 400 and that was it. But I'm showing my age with OGTs. So okay, so that makes sense. Like
Will Murray's got her hand up.
Okay. This one, I'm going to just throw it out there. Although juniors and seniors can use grade replacements, they are still expected to test. Yes.
That is my understanding.
Yes.
Like I said, I would refer to our Office of Assessments, language that they've shared, they are the ones that I would lean to for, guidance on whether students should or should not be testing, and I would lean there for that information. That is not my wheelhouse, but that is my understanding is.
Okay.
So that's the first link in the resource links is the 2021 testing information.
Gotcha. And I have one more, and I'll throw it to Willa Marie. So and this is an interesting question because they have grade 13.
Okay.
So how would that work? Could grade 13 use this year's requirement for seniors?
Yeah, these pathways, my understanding now is that they're eligible to anybody in regardless of cohort. So it's not specific to just students in the 12th grade. It's anybody for that first pathway, anybody that's on track to graduate this year. And I believe that second pathway is just specific to this year. It doesn't mention any specific cohorts. So yeah, if that student is meeting the curriculum requirements, and they're considered on track to graduate, and the principal in consultation with the teachers and counselors determine that they've met those curriculum requirements, then my understanding is, yeah, they'd be eligible to meet that first pathway to graduation. They could also pair that with the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal and meet that second pathway as well.
Okay. As long as they have the curriculum requirements, those Ohio State test requirements, they just need to make sure that they have the curriculum requirements.
Yeah, that is what is required for that pathway to graduation is the curriculum requirements.
Okay. All right, Willa Marie, your turn.
Tag, I'm it. Okay, you guys. So I kind of came in on the tail end of that. Graham, please redirect if I'm coming in like off kilter here. There's been some discussion back and forth with out-of-state transfers. And so, and I know you said this, but I want to make sure I'm saying it correctly. Current juniors and seniors, current seniors, let's go there, who are out-of-state transfers and have not taken, they do have to take the ELA 2 and the geometry for spring.
That is a good question. Can you put that one in the document? I want to make sure that I touch on that.
Well,
is exactly how this plays out with that testing policy. I want to make sure that I get the answer right on that, and I'm not sure.
I certainly will, because it's a loaded question. I should have let in with that. So there was like a pile up. So one out-of-state senior, missed fall window, testing spring. We're not going to have their test results by the time they graduate. Would they fall under the grade substitution as an out-of-state, never taken that test?
So, you said this is a senior, Willa Marie?
Senior.
So my understanding is that likely, yes, they would fall under that course grade substitution. They are a senior in Ohio now. So they are eligible to use that course grade substitution. They would be taking that test for the first time. But the other piece that I would say is that, if they have completed the curriculum requirements and they've met their curriculum requirements, it is unlikely that any score on that test would be a required piece of their pathway to graduation. So, as long as they've met the curriculum requirements, they are likely, meeting that pathway to graduation. Whether they are still required to test, in my understanding, is a separate question. And that's the one that I'm not sure of. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that they will not need to use that score on that geometry or English language arts 2 end of course test as a part of their pathway to graduation because of the options afforded in House Bill 67. They should be able to use one of those other pathways to graduation that involve curriculum requirements or curriculum requirements and the Ohio Means Jobs Readiness Seal. But whether they need to take those English language arts 2 and geometry tests, that is more of an assessment question as to whether or not they're required to do that based on those assessment requirements. So I think that's the one that I would prefer to be in the resource document.
Gotcha.
The agenda. That's the word.
Okay. because like I said, it was a combination of questions and I was trying to condense. The other piece of that is, in a normal year, how do you meet the pathways as a senior out of state transfer coming in after fall testing window? So can we look to the future? Is that a okay question? Because I'm thinking that could tend towards juniors, right? Current juniors who don't fall under that emergency clause. Next year, hopefully, will be a typical year because we're in our new norm now. Will they, if they transfer from out of state after fall testing, how will they meet pathways as a senior?
So my understanding is that they would need to meet a pathway to graduation, whether that be, one of the 3 that are available. Obviously, we have the prorated testing point requirement that involves ELA 2 and geometry. But I don't believe there is any provision that would, allow them to, not get that score unless they're meeting another pathway to graduation. The other pathways to graduation would be, that industry recognized credential and work keys, which, be great if they have that opportunity to do that, but might be tough in, less than half of a school year, maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less. The remediation free ACT or SAT, that may be an option, but if they're not transferring in with that score, and it's unlikely that they're going to get that score, that's obviously not on the table. The other piece would be the long-term graduation requirements. Currently, we do not have any flexibility right now for transfer students in the long-term grad requirements. We have asked for some clarification on that in the legislation. And we're hoping that, we'll get some clarification there as to what any flexibility, might be if it is provided. That could help and be an option for that student. It also potentially, if it's not provided, then students would need to meet those requirements. But in terms of the question that you asked, I do believe that student would need to meet 5 points in English Language Arts 2 and geometry if they're choosing that pathway to graduate and they've already eliminated all of the other ones that I mentioned. So what we have heard, could work in that situation is, one, the graduation ceremony is not something that is directly tied to the student having the diploma. So there's potential that, you could involve them in that ceremony and then, basing that on, the assumption that the test scores are going to come back and then work with them after that if they do not come back to meet the requirements to graduate, or potentially waiting until after those scores come in to award them a diploma at that point. So I hope that helps. It's not the best answer, but right. I hope it helps. Yeah.
I think it did. I'm going to ask another general question. I'll put it on the document for Sarah. So just know I'm about to load it up a little bit with regard to scores and different things of that nature, 9th and 10th, but another general question that was asked. So do we need to retest seniors? And I feel like that was addressed a little bit when Sarah was on. But if you would like to respond to that, my understanding is you test seniors, but it will not be used against them, current seniors, as long as they're meeting their curriculum requirements to graduate for the district.
So yes, and this is the place where I'll continue to say, lean on that assessment requirement. I think the idea is we want to make sure that those assessment requirements are being met there for students. If this is a question that folks really are wanting to know, like if you have to, I would suggest, reaching out to our assessment office or putting that question directly in the document. I'm going to use this agenda document, assuming that, there are further questions after our information docs come out. I can use this agenda document for an FAQ. And hopefully, we can get some of those questions answered there as to those specifics, because I do not want to dig into giving answers for our Office of Assessment, because that's not my expertise. I do want to note, I know we were scheduled to go until 4:30. I can probably take a couple more questions And then I do need to jump off. So if there are some more specific ones, I'm sure there are, and I apologize for not being able to stick around longer.
No, that's okay, Graham. Thank you so much. The one thing that I was thinking with the seniors, if we're talking seniors with that retesting requirement, they should have retested in the spring when we were shut down. So wouldn't that have counted if they were scheduled to retest in the spring when we were shut down? Like that would count.
So you're talking about a junior last year?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're eligible for the course grade substitution if they were scheduled to test or retest last spring.
Yeah. So if we're talking about that retest requirement, that if a kid gets a 1 or a 2, that would count.
So yeah, I mean, it counts as an assessment, yes, or an attempt at that assessment. That course grade substitution for the purposes of graduation counts as an attempt at the assessment, yeah. So especially in relation to that competency requirement, that would count as an attempt at the assessment as well.
Okay. There's some out-of-state transfer questions here, but we'll have you take that with you. So what about an 11th grader that was planning on taking a retake this year? Would they be able to use their previous course grades? So that has come up before, like previous course grades for current juniors and seniors, like maybe a class that they took their sophomore year.
So retakes, yeah, they can absolutely use a previous course grade, as long as they're eligible for the course grade substitution. Yeah, any student retaking an exam can use a previous course grade. That was the same last year, and I believe that's still included this year.
So I think the big takeaway is test the students, try really hard to get them, to give them the Ohio State assessment. And then if there are things that come up due to this pandemic that we're in and the situation that we're in, then assess what those are. If you do need to use course grade substitution because a student could not test and you tried everything you could to test them.
Yeah, and this is once again the piece where I want to lean on our Office of Assessment, in terms of encouraging folks, what I've seen from them and what they're asking folks to do is encouraging folks to test students that can test, and going through that process. So. All
right, thank you so much, Willa Marie. Unmute yourself and show yourself. This has been it's been a stressful year for all of our school counselors across Ohio. And I can't say enough how we've been pulled in 1,000 different directions. I know this school counselors at our district, they're being pulled to cover classes and still keep up with the social emotional learning of their students. So just a big shout out to all of us. And then, ODE is trying really hard to keep up with the legislation, and Graham is wonderful to meet with us and go through this. So in that document is the graduation email. So if you have other emails to send out, and once OSCA gets the official document from ODE, we will blast that on all of our social media.
And we'll definitely be sending that out to a large swath of folks. And if you do have a question in the grad inbox right now and it has not been answered yet, please understand, we'll get you that information as soon as we possibly can. We appreciate your patience. And thank you, Sarah, for hosting this kind of platform, and Willa Marie. Like, I can't tell you how helpful it is just to, be able to come and share and talk and hear what folks have to say. And, from the bottom of my heart, coming from the department, thank you all. Truly, 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 not just the two incredible women that I see on my screen, but all of you that have joined this call today. I really appreciate everybody's hard work and dedication this year. And we're starting to get warmer. Not that today would tell you anything about that, but you know, we're getting there, and I appreciate every single one of you and the work that you're doing. So.
And I just switched to the YouTube chat, and Willa Marie, it is just nonstop.
Yeah.
Wow.
We're having parties. I'm answering, but it's been really good discussion. And when I see questions, I'm trying to respond to say that I've placed your questions in the document.
Right.
I feel like a lot of it was addressed as I go through, and I promise you guys, I'll make sure that all the questions are in the document, because we know you're probably commuting or whatever, and it's kind of hard to do both. But yeah, I just, if I may say, you guys hang in there. Like, I feel that we are all just like last year. We all are trying to do what's best for our students. And we've talked about that right here. I think too, you guys, self-care is critical.
Yes.
And so it is beyond our hours right now. Y'all have been outside of your contracted hours. So please, my challenge to each and every one of you is to make sure that you're drinking water, that you're eating, that you're taking care of yourself, and that you at least take an hour today to do something not school related. Don't be grading papers. Do not check your emails. Do not call in. Like, it's really hard. My colleague, especially, shout out to Betty, she forever be on her email. Like, she's gone now and she's trying to come back to school, and I'm about to lock it down so she cannot return. However, nonetheless, you guys, like, we can't take care of our students, and we cannot have these very civil conversations if we're not taking care of ourselves. So thank y'all so much for participating. Like I said, I'll make sure that the questions are getting transferred to the docs. And Graham, you already know how I feel about you. Thank you so much just for being here, because we were like, Graham, you about to take some heat, buddy. So be right. Ooh, can I say that on YouTube? I might need to shut up. But he was like, yes, I am here to help. That he did not back down, you guys. He was like, yes, send me the questions. I'm going to be here. This is what I have. Let me talk to you guys. So how many times do we have somebody who's making decisions or in decision-making areas when the stove get to cooking, the fire's going, want to step up? So major kudos to you and your team, Graham. Major kudos to you, Sarah, who, you know, you kind of keep me all the way together and set up these documents. And major kudos to each and every one of the counselors on the current live and who will be joining momentarily or during the replay.
Yes, very much. Very much. Thank you, Willa Marie. It's a group effort. And just know that the Ohio School Counseling Association, we meet with ODE every Monday. So we are an advocate for you. And if you have not joined the Ohio School Counseling Association, you need to do so. So I will put that link in that document if it's not already there. I don't think it is. I should put it there. So, all right, everyone. Have a wonderful, if you've already had your spring break, I hope it was phenomenal. If you have not, enjoy your spring break next week. And we will see you back here. Our next meetup is going to be a continuation of the graduation requirements. And we're going to look at that career part of the graduation requirements. So I'm going to click end stream. So everyone have a wonderful Easter, happy Easter, everyone, and April Fool's Day. So make sure that you enjoy April Fool's Day tomorrow. Do something fun, because humor is a wonderful thing. So
we do not celebrate in my house.
You don't? Oh, well, we'll see about that. We'll see.
Hey, seems like a challenge. Seems like a challenge.
Challenge. All right, we may have been